Hello, everybody. I'm Amira, Minister of Justice and Witness for Clackamas United Church of Christ. I have the amazing Neurodivergent Rebel here with us today. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. And your pronouns are they, them?
My pronouns are they, them. Thank you so much for asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just want to kind of do a little bit of a backstory. A couple weeks ago, for our church, okay, so every month we have a church rally. And this month I wanted to shine a light on autism. And so I asked my friend Frey, who is an amazing human. They are my friend, and they are also a part of our little church Facebook group. And so I reached out to Frey, and Frey gave me a ton of information. And you were a part of most of that information, your YouTube and all the things. So then I started to look at a couple of videos, and then I reached out to email you, and here we are.
I'm so glad you did.
You too. You're so awesome. So I just want to hear a little bit about you, your backstory a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I describe myself as a queer, multiply neurodivergent, late discovered adult. And what I mean by that is I am autistic. I also have an ADHD diagnosis. However, I didn't find out that I was neurodivergent, which means, one of these different diagnoses. Also, there's dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia. There's a few other things that go in that neurodiversity umbrella in addition to autism and ADHD. But this was all hidden from me until I was 29. And really what happened and led to the discovery was I was in a workplace setting where I was trying really hard, square peg in a round hole situation, to fit into the neurotypical corporate workplace the way neurotypicals did it, pushing, and I was ruining myself, the peg. I couldn't do it, and I was falling apart. I was making myself sick, and I found out I was autistic and started changing, the way I treat myself. Because when you're autistic, your health is different. You have different health needs. You have different sensory needs because of the way we process the world and information. There's sensory overload and other things that can impact us that don't bother other people. And so for a lot of years, I had all of these health conditions that couldn't be solved because we were looking at them as if they were from a neurotypical perspective. But being autistic means things were triggering me that wouldn't trigger neurotypical people. So I changed my life around when I found out I was autistic, started to live more authentically as an autistic person, started to kind of take that mask off, because for a lot of years, what I had just been doing was I'd learned to put on this brave face and hide all of my struggles and my weaknesses. And, I was just trying to muscle through them. I had no self-compassion. None, before I found out I was autistic. And so that mask started to fade away, and I started to become my more authentic self. And I've, since gone to different employers and am now working for myself, and, really fully supported in ways I'd never been before, because I didn't even understand I had different needs, and that my pace maybe should look different. And so through coming out autistic, I've also come out a bit more with being queer and my gender identity, because it's just another one of those masks that was just falling away when I started to be more honest with myself about who I was and how much of the things I was doing was performative in order to blend in. And, it's not a manipulative thing. It's something you do for self-defense. As me and many other autistic people, we are bullied in school. Sometimes bullies are our peers, but they can also even be teachers. I had a teacher that tied my ankles to my chair once to try and keep my feet still. So, there's a message from a young age sometimes that we're wrong just for existing and behaving in ways that are natural to us, because we aren't doing things the neurotypical way, or we don't fit into the neurotypical systems. And I had this, kind of great awakening through my late discovery process, when I'd kind of been in a bit of a quarter life crisis, I guess, for 5 years anyway, leading up to it. And I'd been doing a lot of meditation and yoga and soul searching, because I knew something wasn't right. It was undiagnosed anxiety. I had no idea I had anxiety, but it was, I was trying to find a solution. And like those calm moments in that meditation and yoga and breathing were like the only calm I was finding in the anxiety storm. And so I found out I had anxiety when I found out I was autistic too. So it's like, it was that missing piece that I've been trying really hard, and the meditation and the yoga can only do so much because I didn't really know who I was anymore. And so it was just this, oh my gosh, aha moment. And then realizing that there are a lot of autistic people out there like me, or neurodivergent people out there like me. Maybe they've got ADHD or something else going on. They could be dyslexic and not know. And they're out there maybe believing that they are broken, because if you don't have a label for what makes you different, you're going to make up other labels. And my labels were stubborn, rebellious. I thought I was stupid. I thought I was incapable learner because the school system wasn't tailored to the way I learned. Although I do very well self-teaching myself if I teach myself my way. But I believed I was a lesser broken neurotypical person, and then realizing, oh, I'm not like them. I don't have to compare myself to them. I don't have to try to be like them. I can find what works for me, and it's okay that it's different, that I have different strengths and different weaknesses. And I want other autistic people to see that, other neurodivergent people to see that, whether they have a diagnosis or not. And so that's been like this big why that's been driving this blog I started 4.5 years ago. That's become a pretty big success. I think like all over all channels, it's over 120,000 followers and reach, like depending on the platform. So it's wild. I could never 4 years ago, like I never would have thought it would have grown to the scale. It was just me, a little angry autistic person in a keyboard that like didn't like what I found when I went to Google and typed autism, because it was just so bad. And it was just all like, autism is bad, autistic people are horrible, we need to cure them. And it broke my heart, because there's some good things, too. And there's a lot of things people don't understand about being autistic.
Yes,
the long-winded answer.
Yeah. No. There was two things come up for me. One of the things you said in the video, which I'll get to, one of the videos I watched, which I'll get to, but in my early 20s, I'm 42 now. In my early 20s, I was living with a friend who had a child, and to help out, I would watch her child for a couple hours a day when she wasn't at home. And I was really good with kids. I'd worked with youth behaviorally, and I was like totally fine with behaviors and everything. But there was something about her son that I would break down crying at the end of the day. I tried everything in my power to help when I would help him with chores or schoolwork. And I just didn't understand why I was having such a hard time, to the point where every day I was crying, not in front of him, but I was like, I'm not good enough to help be, I work with kids all the time. And then I ended up moving, and like 3 years later, this friend called me and said, because I remember telling her there's something going on, I don't know what it is. And she'd be like, you're tripping, that's just how kids are. And I'm like, no, it's deeper than that. Like, I'd be crying to her. And she called me and she said, Amira, he has Asperger's. And I just felt such relief. I didn't feel like, oh, and this is gonna be my next point, but I felt relief that, okay, so now he can get the skills and the help that he needs. So yeah, now that child is like 22 years old and doing well. But anyway, one of the videos that you watched, you were saying how when certain people, when you tell certain people about your diagnoses, it's the same thing as coming out. When you're like, hey, I'm gay, and they're like, oh, I knew that already, like, or you know what I mean? So tell us a little bit about that and how that makes you feel.
I think there's some differences, but it's very similar. And also there are some differences. Like, similarities are, you are coming out forever to every new person you choose to come out to. Like, it's going to be an endless process for the rest of your life. People think, oh, you come out once and that's it. No, you're like, you never are done coming out. And like, you learn through coming out that there are going to be people who are going to accept it. There are going to be people who are going to not accept it. There are going to be people who you may lose, and there will be people who may come back later and come around eventually. Like, it's the same thing. So those parts are similar. But there are some very frustrating differences in coming out autistic that I do not experience when coming out queer. I mean, maybe it's the hair, I don't know, but people don't tend to say, I never would have guessed when I come out queer. It's not surprising, I guess, for some people. People, when you come out autistic, I think because they've been conditioned that being autistic is something wrong or bad, they think you're self-deprecating, or, you know, because and so when someone self-deprecates, you have this urge to tell them it's okay and tell them, no, you're not that, you know, it's not that bad, you're not that bad. So like they don't understand that it's like, we're not saying this is a bad thing, I'm just trying to explain something to you that will give insight. And the reaction from people is very often, oh, but you must be so high functioning, or oh, I never would have guessed, or oh, you know, but you don't look autistic, as if being autistic is something bad, where it's not. Or, you know, they don't believe you. If there's someone that have known you long enough, they may have an idea what autism is, and it's a very narrow media portrayal of autistic children, which are not a good reflection of like a 5-year-old to a 40-year-old or a 30-year-old. Like, of course, I am 34. I am nothing like your 5-year-old anymore. But, you know, like the other day on my Facebook page, I had someone commenting on my post, and basically the comment was talking about supposed neurodivergence that aren't probably autistic, but they talk about autism anyway. And she went on to describe like all of these things that her autistic kid does as like a 5 or 7-year-old child, is like real autistic people, duh, and then was describing like all the things I did as a kid. And then was like, you know nothing about real autism. And I'm just like, you just described me as a kid, like literally. And I'm not going to repeat what these things were that she said, but it's like, yeah, I've come a long way. It's really dismissive of you to say, oh, you must be so high functioning, because you completely ignore all of the work in my life that has taken to get me to this point, because I've had to do things the hard way or the long way, because a lot of traditional avenues and doors have been closed to me because of being neurodivergent and not knowing it and not having accommodations for 30 years. Like, it's been harder for me. And so it really is like, so it hurts to have someone say, oh, well, you know, you're not autistic, you don't do any of these things. It's like, yeah, not anymore. You know, I've busted my buns to get here.
Right. And you shouldn't have to defend how
and
the level of autism.
I was like, we don't do that here. I blocked them, and I made a post on my Facebook page. I was like, we do not question people's diagnoses on this page. Autistic people and neurodivergent people do not have to defend themselves in this space. Thank you, bye. You know, yes. It's like, no.
Goodbye. Yeah, yeah. So I would love to talk about Autism Speaks, because I know that is a huge resource for a lot of parents, a lot of people, and I'm about spreading awareness. So
yeah, well, it hurts my heart that there's such a big resource. If you start looking, you know, just Google Autism Speaks plus problems, you will find video after video after resource talking about the issues around this organization. But to sum it up and make it as, I think, concise as possible, because we have a very limited amount of time, and this could be a whole 1-hour video. The problem with Autism Speaks is, historically, it has been an organization that is run by non-autistic people to talk about autistic people. And unfortunately, their messaging historically has been, for example, they had, you know, an I Am Autism video and another video sounding the alarm, battling the autism epidemic. I mean, just the title of that enough. Like, autism is something to be feared. Autistic people will ruin your life. Your divorce and your family will fall apart if you have an autistic child. Saying all of these really horrible things about autistic people and painting us out to be like a huge burden. That we don't deserve to exist. And if you dig deeper into this company, and hopefully they don't come after us for saying this, like we're treading into ground here. Autism Speaks is big business. The autism industry, you know, there's an autism industrial complex at this point. Big autism is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and Autism Speaks has basically been historically a media front, a PR firm, to push these therapies that they say autistic people need to be normalized and be less autistic. That's the messaging here. And, you know, these therapies are, if you look back at the history of these therapies, were developed alongside gay conversion therapy, even by the same people. Ivar Lovaas, look at the Feminine Boy Project, because he was on both of those. And so, you know, the gay conversion therapy was something that was pushed to make kids act less queer, because they thought being queer meant you would have a poor outcome later in life. And so you needed to have early intervention because it's easier to manipulate children, because it's a coercive therapy where you are basically manipulating people into, you know, like doing things that they are not naturally comfortable with, to go against their own instincts in order to conform with what is expected of them in society. And so Autism Speaks is used to scare parents into thinking that this autism is this really bad thing, and if they don't act really quickly and, you know, get this therapy now, their kids are never going to do all of these different things, and they're never going to be normal, when being normal really should never be the goal. We want autistic people to be happy and be able to express themselves and have boundaries. And unfortunately, like, this therapy completely destroys that ability for us to have boundaries.
And I also heard that like over 70% of people that go through these horrible therapies end up with like PTSD.
Oh yeah.
So that's like,
it's a wormhole. It keeps going, but we're up against, you know, it's a David and Goliath situation here, where Autism Speaks is big, and Big Autism and all of these therapy service providers are essentially out silencing and speaking over actual autistic people that are saying, hey, we just want to exist. Yeah, we need to do things differently. Maybe the kids need to be supported differently growing up. Maybe we may look different as adults, because we're all different. Some of us have different needs than I do. Some of us may communicate using communication devices and other things, and they may not speak with their mouths. And some of us, even myself, if I have enough anxiety, I can't get a word out in my mouth, and I may shut down. Like, it's been a few years. My mental health has been better, and I have less anxiety in general. But when I was more anxious, like, for example, like I remember sitting in the car for like 30 minutes and knowing exactly what I wanted to say and not being able to physically move my mouth, and I just locked in myself, like, okay, I'm just gonna sit on my phone because I can't talk. My partner's sitting next to me driving, and I'm like, I can't talk. Okay, I'm just gonna get on my phone. You know, I couldn't move my mouth for like 20 minutes. I'm just like, wonder how long this is going to last. It's been a while since this happened. This, you know.
Yeah.
Just waiting. So some of us situationally can't speak with our mouths. So it can depend on like how well we're doing in life and how supported we are and our mental health and all these other factors that we don't always look at with autistic people.
Yeah. So this is just a random thought that came in my head. Do you get a lot of pushback from what you do, like from the community, or?
I get pushback, I think, the most from, I think the ABA service providers leave me alone now because they don't want to be in my crosshairs, because my reach has grown enough that I could probably slam them on social media. It would be bad. But what I do get a lot of is parents who've bought into this mindset that their child is a burden on their life and autism is terrible. And how dare I say autism is not terrible? And then they've maybe gone and put their kids in these therapies. And I understand where this is coming from. Imagine if I told you that you've been abusing your child. Like, how are you going to feel? Like, I'm essentially telling these parents, hey, I know you're paying all this money because it's, you know, they say kids need 40 hours a week of 10 to 40 hours a week of ABA, and these people make at least $100 an hour. So you do the math on how much ABA costs these families. So these families have spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of investment in this miracle therapy that is also probably taking credit for the milestones the child is reaching naturally and saying, look, your child never would have done this if it wasn't for ABA, you know, even though they probably just, you know, it was a natural milestone. But ABA starts to take all the credit for all of the things the child will do in life from then on. So then the child gets no credit for their own anything. And so if the parent believes this because they've been manipulated into this system, I'm fragilely shattering their reality in a way that they have to confront the fact that they may have abused their child. and that's a lot of cognitive dissonance to get through. So, those people are sometimes really mad and really the most angry, but I understand, because that's got to be really painful to confront.
Right. And then my next question for you, again, just totally random.
Yeah.
Do you have support? Like, do you have physical support, your circle? I know you talked about your partner, but do you have like people really holding you down in your efforts and the things you're doing?
I like, it's hard because sometimes you feel like you're on your own. Lately, since I've been I lost my full-time job in September due to COVID, and I said it's actually been the best thing that's ever happened to me, believe it or not, because I never would have left. I was so loyal. I was VP of marketing and a business consultant with an HR and recruiting firm, and I never would have left. But I'm not really alone anymore since then. It's like I've still worked with that company as a contractor. I've got, my partner. Right now we're living close to my mom since COVID. We haven't really been traveling. We've got our bus. And it's with advocacy, that what's changed has been that now, since I'm my own boss, I have a lot more say over things, and I've been having a lot more Zoom meetings with people and connecting with other people in the community. So, as you said, physical, and it threw me off a little bit, like physical support, but
really, like emotional.
But a lot of the support has kind of come from seeing how many people are out there working on the same things, and it gives me life to see that we're all on the same mission. I don't know. I think as an autistic person, like my social, it's not that I'm not social. People misunderstand. It's like I can be social, but I can't be social just for the sake of being social. Usually, unless I'm really, really close with you, like my partners or something, like I would be really social with them. But like with someone I don't know that well, it's easier to be social if we're working on a project or a common goal or a task together. So if we're collaborating, it gives me a sense of community and camaraderie. And that, for me, that's kind of the sense of community I need more than socializing just for socializing's sake, which feels awkward to me.
Good, it makes sense. And I guess I should have reworded my question in the work. I know when you're doing work like you do, because I do the same type of work, not for autism, but just in general, it can become very isolating if you don't have support, like emotional support. So it sounds like you do have good.
I'm lucky. Yeah. I'm really lucky in that respect, because before I grew a social media like community around my Facebook page and my Twitter and all of that, I really didn't have support. And that's kind of why I went to the internet, because I was trying to work out and process that late discovery when that information was hidden to me, because I was recommended a few books and then I went to Google and it was horrible. And I was like, the books for autistic people, I need to hear from other autistic people, because that I related to. That was it. That I understood. But all of this, autistic people are broken, they're obsessive, they're blah, 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 all of these things that talked about only the worst parts of me in only the worst possible language. Like that was like soul crushing. And so it was like a need to find that. And so I guess at this point, like I've built that, because they say let your freak flag fly, right? Yeah, I did it. I flew that freak flag as high as possible. And I don't want to call us freaks, but it's just like the saying. But I found my humans have found me just by being myself. And that's the thing. I think that's drawn people, is the authenticity of it and the honesty of it. People appreciate that.
Yeah, I definitely do. And I'm already a fan. So you have me now in your little support.
I'm glad you're here.
Circle. Yes. Okay, so I have a question about signage. So when we do our rallies, we make signs and of encouragement and love. What are some words that you feel would be uplifting and positive for the autism community that we could?
Okay, so let's see, that would give it away really quickly on a sign. I think something that would make me happy if I saw it, and I would say, oh, this is it. They get it. Embrace neurodiversity.
Yes.
Because that explains it in 2 words.
Yes.
We have autism acceptance, which we say is better than having awareness of autism. I think eventually we'll get to autistic appreciation, autistic pride, we'll get there. We're working on it, but that doesn't make as much sense to have autistic pride if you're a neurotypical, holding that up. So that's kind of like doesn't work on a sign. But also I like autistic empowerment, or empower autistic people, or lift autistic voices. Because really autistic people are speaking if people listen. We don't need Autism Speaks to speak for us. Especially, we don't need neurotypical people speaking for us. Like, there are autism organizations out there. There are autistic people out there. There's autistic people out there. Even, they say, oh, well, we're speaking for the autistic people who are non-speaking. Well, non-speaking people often will write. Mm-hmm. So if you're willing to read, you can learn something. They're out there too. So there are non-speaking autistic people who are leading in organizations and are sharing information. So we should listen to them instead of these organizations that claim to speak for, especially because those organizations often claim to speak for those people in the autistic community specifically, saying, oh, well, we're speaking for the autistics who can't speak for themselves. It's like, you're speaking over all of the autistics, especially the autistics who communicate differently. And so, you can seek out non-speaking autistics. There's The Reason I Jump is a really good book that's like been turned into a documentary that's coming out. The Reason I Jump. So that's supposed to be good. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks really exciting. And they centered, non-speaking autistic people in that, which is important because they have really great perspectives that we don't get to hear because people have dismissed them and said, oh, they're non-speaking. They must have nothing to say because they communicate differently. And so
lots to say.
Lots to say.
Yeah, I worked 10 years with DD adults, and I worked with all kinds of, and even the ones that were nonverbal. We're not nonverbal, okay? They have a lot to say. There's different ways of communication. Get to know people and care about them.
And see, that was what I first found out too. Was I think when I was first learning I was autistic, I did discover like a video of Carly Fleischman, and she had a YouTube channel, and she's a non-speaking young autistic woman, and I haven't seen anything from her in a while online, but she did an interview with Channing Tatum. And then I found like those things, like her channel, and like learned about her story and how like her family had completely written her off until like one day when she went and typed something on the computer, and then they found out that they had been talking about her like she couldn't understand everything her entire life, and of course she could, she just couldn't physically move her mouth. And I was like, know what that's like, even though it's not all of the time.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, it was a eureka moment for me. It was like, okay, and the fact that, even now, like a lot of the voices that you see representation of autistic people are going to be more like me and are going to be speaking because that's what people like on the internet are going to jive with stereotypically because they want videos. They want videos. I like to read. I'd rather read than watch a video any day. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like you need to be out there even more. So hopefully, because I feel like this information is so important. And I had no idea. I always thought the Autism Speaks and all of that was like a positive. Like I never got into it heavily or did a lot of research, but it's really easy. And even the puzzle piece symbol thing, that's not a positive. And I still see that to this day. Like people that are autistic don't jive with that.
Most of us don't. There may be some people that jive because like the people who jive with it usually will say they jive with it because it feels like learning they were autistic was a missing piece of information for themselves, and they choose to see it that way. But if you really look at the history, the original puzzle logo was for the NAS in the United Kingdom, and it was like a green and black logo of a puzzle with a child crying next to it. So it had a lot of implications. One, that it was a little boy crying, so that all autistic people are little boys. One little boy is crying, so being autistic must be horrible and it's a terrible thing. To, it also kind of implies that it's a kid's thing and it only happens to kids, and that, it's something that will go away as they grow up. So there's lots of harmful misconceptions, and, thinking that someone will, maybe you can normalize them and make them neurotypical leads down a very dangerous road, because then it's like we've got people who are selling these quack cures and all of these dangerous things that will not help, or these harmful therapies that cause PTSD, and make it so autistic people are overly compliant and don't know how to speak up for their own wants or needs, because they're just, please the person, do whatever you gotta do to get through it, because that's what the therapy's like. This is the correct response, whether you agree with it or not, you've got to give the correct response.
Right.
So
Do you know that
brainwashed.
I noticed there's like just a blue puzzle piece now? What is, do you know what that's about?
So
Just
that's
the blue?
Autism Speaks logo specifically, but they've
Oh.
actually, it's blue and peach now. But
Okay.
I mean, it's still a puzzle. I think even like the original organization that had that sad child puzzle piece, they don't even use a puzzle anymore. Like, they've changed, they use something different. But Autism Speaks is still using the puzzle logo.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll probably eventually change it, because like autistic people don't like it. But Autism Speaks is historically not an organization for autistic people. It is an organization for non-autistic caregivers of autistic people who typically feel as if their autistic person they're caring for is some kind of a burden on them, and they want their autistic person normalized or cured, or want to find a cure for autism to prevent more autistic people from existing.
Ooh, God, it feels like a stab in my heart.
So you might understand why their demographic of people like the puzzle piece a lot of times, and so they're not going to feel a lot of pressure to change it, because they don't really care too much what autistic people think. I did a poll recently, and it was like, do you think Autism Speaks is helpful? And it was like, I was asking autistic people on Twitter, and 99% said no, 1% said yes. And I think someone said, I didn't mean to click yes. So that was probably an accident, because I think there was a comment saying, I'm sorry, I clicked yes.
That's awesome.
So
Wow, that
they're
tells
not
you.
for us, and they don't care what we think. So that's why they still have a puzzle piece, in my opinion. Let's add that disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer.
They don't come after me. I've heard they've done that.
Have they? Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll. We're a nice little church.
We're little. Nobody knows.
Yeah. Okay. How can folks support you and contact you, follow you?
I'm pretty easy to find. That's the good news, because I've been busting my buns for the last 4.5 years. Neurodivergentrebel.com, or if you Google Neurodivergent Rebel, you can find me. I'm on all social media channels. I'm also, in my day job, I work in business consulting. I deliver a lot of virtual trainings these days that used to be in person, with organizations on how to make their spaces more inclusive to autistic people, and training on autism and neurodiversity specifically, since I come at it from that autism, ADHD, neurodivergent angle, and a lot of things that benefit, anyone that has a different neurodiverse condition is better for everyone. So that kind of stuff is at neurodivergentconsulting.org.
Yes, I love that. See, I didn't know that piece, that you did the consulting part. Thank you so much. My last question I always like to ask everybody: what is your superpower?
My superpower. Ooh. It's a tie between two, and it's really hard to pick one out of the two.
You can have both.
Okay, I can have both. Okay, cool. And so this is going to be fun. So the first one is something that in the medical book is listed as a problem with autistic people. And it is, actually, they're kind of connected. It is this hyper focus and inability to let things go and to fixate on things. Like, oh, that's terrible, they say. But it is also something that makes me a terrific problem solver, because my brain is just wired to see all of the problems. And so that's also like a curse and a blessing. Like, I see problems, they stare me in the face, and if a problem gets stuck in my head, I can't let it go. I really can't. And it may be in my head for weeks and months until I keep going, until I'll just keep chiseling away at the problem until it's solved, because I can't drop it. So like, yeah, I can understand, and it can be a horrible thing, say, if you get a problem stuck in your head that is insolvable.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned to kind of steer myself a little bit in years away from problems that I find can't be solved. But it's hard. It is hard. But I think it's really a skill that I am like, I can't let things go.
Okay.
So that's a skill, a superpower, if you would, but it's also a double-sided kind of a curse blessing thing. And the same could maybe even be said for just how, like they say it's a bad thing that autistic people are very content on their own working on projects and tasks, and like the kids are happy playing on their own, and they don't maybe always engage other people in their play, and that's supposed to be like a bad thing. And sometimes, if I don't make effort to set time to have people time, I've had to like, okay, I need to prioritize this. Like, I can be very content on my own, and I don't think that's a bad thing. That when I am very passionate about something, it's like falling in love with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm doing the thing, my special thing, they call us special interests when we're autistic people, because their passions are passions, but because we're autistic, they have to be special. When, I don't know, but like when I am engaged in my passions and my special interests, like I am in my happy place, and that is even better than hanging out with people other than, like my partners. Like that's the only thing that's better than any, like it's like I'm in love with my interest. I'm in love with my passion. So I'm totally content being on my own doing this thing I love. And so that's not a bad thing, unless, you forget to take care of other people. But a lot of times that's painted as something that's wrong about being autistic. And I think it's a good thing.
Awesome. I think I agree. I think when I do the same thing. When I'm focused on something, I'm totally fine just being by myself.
Yeah.
Christa, this has been so fun. Yeah, I would love to have more conversations with you in the future. I appreciate you for fitting me in your schedule, because I know how busy you are. And the embrace that neurodiversity and empower autism and lift autism voices. I'm so excited to write those out in huge.
Make sure it's autistic voices, not
autistic. Yes.
Because I want to like real quick before we jump off, because that's because being autistic is like a very essential part of us, versus with autism where it's something that could be potentially removed. Like if you took away me being autistic, I wouldn't be the same person. It impacts how I think, the people I have in my life, how I socialize, my interests, my passions, because it impacts so many of those things. I wouldn't be the same person. So that's why it's like autistic, because it is such an integral part of our identity and who we are as human beings.
Okay. Autistic.
And you may find some people that disagree with me, but they are in the minority within the minority.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to always be corrected.
Empowering.
Yes. It's so awesome.
Thank you
so much. And I look forward to talking to you again. I will post this video on Friday morning, and I will tag you if that's okay.
Yeah, please do. And email it to me too. I'll share it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.